Chapter 15 of the Red Fairy Book. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Red Fairy Book by Andrew Lang. Chapter 15. The Three Princesses of Whiteland. There was once upon a time a fisherman, who lived hard by a palace and fished for the king's table. One day he was out fishing, but caught nothing at all. Let him do what he might, with rod and line, there was never even so much as a sprat on his hook. But when the day was well nigh over, a head rose up out of the water and said, "If you will give me what your wife shows you when you go home, you shall catch fish enough." So the man said, "Yes, in a moment," and then he caught fish in plenty. But when he got home at night, and his wife showed him a baby which had just been born, and fell a weeping and wailing when he told her of the promise which he had given, he was very unhappy. All this was soon told to the king up at the palace, and when he heard what sorrow the woman was in, and the reason of it, he said that he himself would take the child and see if he could not save it. The baby was a boy, and the king took him at once and brought him up as his own son until the lad grew up. Then one day he begged to have leave to go out with his father to fish. He had a strong desire to do this, he said. The king was very unwilling to permit it, but at last the lad got leave. He stayed with his father, and all went prosperously and well with them the whole day, until they came back to the land in the evening. Then the lad found that he had lost his pocket handkerchief, and would go out in the boat after it. But no sooner had he got into the boat than it began to move off with him so quickly that the water foamed all round about, and all that the lad did to keep the boat back with the oars was done to no purpose, for it went on and on the whole night through, and at last he came to a white strand that lay far, far away. There he landed, and when he had walked on for some distance, he met an old man with a long white beard. "What is the name of this country?" said the youth. "Whiteland," answered the man, and then he begged the youth to tell him whence he came and what he was going to do, and the youth did so. "Well then," said the man, "if you walk on farther along the seashore here, you will come to three princesses who are standing in the earth so that their heads alone are out of it. Then the first of them will call you, she is the eldest, and will beg you very prettily to come to her and help her. And the second will do the same, but you must not go near either of them. Hurry past, as if you neither saw nor heard them, but you shall go to the third, and do what she bids you. It will bring you good fortune." When the youth came to the first princess, she called to him and begged him to come to her very prettily, but he walked on as if he did not even see her, and he passed by the second in the same way, but he went up to the third. "If thou wilt do what I tell thee, thou shalt choose among us three," said the princess. So the lad said that he was most willing, and she told him that three Trolls had planted them all three there in the earth, but that formerly they had dwelt in the castle which he could see at some distance in the wood. "Now," she said, "thou shalt go into the castle, and let the Trolls beat thee one night for each of us, and if thou canst but endure that, thou wilt set us free." "Yes," answered the lad, I will certainly try to do so. When thou goest in, continued the Princess, 2 lions will stand by the doorway, but if thou only goest straight between them, they will do thee no harm. Go straight forward into a small dark chamber, there thou shalt lie down. Then the Troll will come and beat thee, but thou shalt take the flask which is hanging on the wall, and anoint thyself wheresoever he has wounded thee, after which thou shalt be as well as before. Then lay hold of the sword which is hanging by the side of the flask, and smite the Troll dead." So he did what the Princess had told him. He walked straight in between the lions, just as if he did not see them, and then into the small chamber, and lay down on the bed. The first night a Troll came with 3 heads and 3 rods, and beat the lad most unmercifully, but he held out until the Troll was done with him, and then he took the flask and rubbed himself. Having done this, he grasped the sword and smote the Troll dead. In the morning, when he went to the seashore, the Princesses were out of the earth as far as their waists. The next night everything happened in the same way, but the Troll who came then had 6 heads and 6 rods, and he beat him much more severely than the first had done. But when the lad went out of doors next morning, the Princesses were out of the earth as far as their knees. On the 3rd night a Troll came who had 9 heads and 9 rods, and he struck the lad and flogged him so long that at last he swooned away. So the Troll took him up and flung him against the wall, and this made the flask of ointment fall down, and it splashed all over him, and he became as strong as ever again. Then, without loss of time, he grasped the sword and struck the Troll dead, and in the morning when he went out of the castle, the Princesses were standing there entirely out of the earth. So he took the youngest for his queen, and lived with her very happily for a long time. At last, however, he took a fancy to go home for a short time to see his parents. His queen did not like this, but when his longing grew so great that he told her he must and would go, she said to him: "One thing shalt thou promise me, and that is, to do what thy father bids thee, but not what thy mother bids thee," and this he promised. So she gave him a ring, which enabled him who wore it to obtain 2 wishes. He wished himself at home, and instantly found himself there, but his parents were so amazed at the splendour of his apparel that their wonder never ceased. When he had been at home for some days, his mother wanted him to go up to the palace, to show the king what a great man he had become. The father said, "No, he must not do that. If he does, we shall have no more delight in him this time." But he spoke in vain, for the mother begged and prayed until at last he went. When he arrived there he was more splendid, both in raiment and in all else, than the other king, who did not like it, and said: "Well, you can see what kind of queen mine is, but I can't see yours. I do not believe you have such a pretty queen as I have. Would to heaven she were standing here, and then you would be able to see," said the young king, and in an instant she was standing there. But she was very sorrowful, and said to him: "Why didst thou not remember my words, and listen only to what thy father said? Now must I go home again at once, and thou hast wasted both thy wishes." Then she tied a ring in his hair, which had her name upon it, and wished